In this lesson, I will show you how to generate curves from particles. So first, I'm going to create the emitter by coming to the shelf and clicking on circle. You can choose a sphere too if you want. In my case, I will choose a circle and I will hit enter. And then I will dive inside, and here in the parameter editor, I will change the orientation to ZX. Okay, so I want the curve to be on the ground. And then I will go to the arc type and I will choose open arc. This will remove the polygon inside the circle. Now we have just the edge. Okay, and you can change the primitive type to, for example, NURB curve. So now it's NURB and smooth. Okay, and now I will go to the object level and select the circle, and we are going to particles shelf, and I will click source particle emitter. This will emit the particles from the points on the curve. Okay, and let's hit L on the keyboard, and let's delete this silly merge node. Okay, this created by default, and let's hit play and see. Okay, we have some particles falling down, and let's disable the gravity, or let's delete that because we don't need that. Okay, so now we have some particles emitting from the curve. And now let's add some variation to the particles by hitting tab on the keyboard and typing pop flock. Okay, so this is the pop flock. This will make the particles move around the circle. So now let's see what's happening. As you see, they are going too far. So if I come here to the central attraction, I will try to increase that, and let's hit play and see. Okay, as you see now, the particles moving around the circle, and they don't go far than that. Okay, and we have mass amount of particles, so I will try to reduce that by coming to the circle, to the pop source, and in the birth I will change that to about 500, and let's see if that okay. Let's change it to 1000. Okay, so now let's go to the object level, and in the source particles, now I want to create a line between every particle in the viewport. So I can do that by hitting tab and type add, and let's connect that to the add, and nothing happens because we want to go to the polygons. And then if you click on the by group, now as you see Houdini connecting every particle with a line. Okay, so but the problem now is that the lines are sharp, right? So we can smooth that by coming here and hitting tab and type subdivide. So we are subdividing the polygons. Okay, so as you see now we get more smooth curves. Okay, so I will increase the depth to about 5. Okay, it's okay for now, and let's see. Okay, as you see we have curves in the viewport. So now if I move the time slider somewhere here, and if I go to the render view, let's create the camera first by going to the light and camera tab and holding control and clicking on the camera. Now we are inside the camera that we created. Okay, so now I will go to the render view and select our camera, and now hit render. Let's see what we get. Okay, as you see we get a flat lines, and really it's ugly. So you can get rounded lines like tubes by hitting tab and typing poly. Where is the polywire. Okay, this is the polywire. So if I set that here and connect that to the polywire, now as you see I have rounded tubes, okay, rounded wires. So if you decrease the wire radius here, for example 0.3, and you can increase the subdivisions to, for example, 8 to make it smoother. But the problem with this method is really takes mass amount of time to calculate, and really it will be a nightmare for you, okay, to see. As you see, the update is too late. So I will show you really very powerful trick here. So I will delete the polywire. The idea is to create point spheres on the curves, and we will create mass amount of spheres, and when we render the curves, they will look like they are wires. Okay, so I will show you that in a moment. Okay, so I will go to the object level, and here in the source particle I will go to the render, and if you go to the geometry, so here you see I have the render points as sphere or circles. I will leave that to sphere, and if I come here I can change that to render points, render only points. Okay, so this will not render the curves, just will render the points as spheres. Okay, so let's go back to the render view and see what we get. And really this method will save you mass amount of time. Okay, so as you see we are rendering the points as spheres. If we increase the point amount or the point count on the curves, this will look like wires. Okay, so let's do that by coming to the source particle, and I want to show you something here. If I click on the points here, as you see now I have the points in the viewport, right? So if I increase the subdivision, for example, to 8, now you see I divided the curves to more points, and I can change that, for example, to 10, and it's really fast. Okay, so now let's go back to the render view and see. Okay, as you see now we don't get any point, and it looks like they are tubes, right? Sorry, wires, right? It's great. So another thing we need to do to decrease the radius of the spheres, right? So we can do that by coming to the source particles. Here in the point scale you can decrease that, for example 0.5. Now we are decreasing the sphere scale, right, or the sphere radius. We can do that in another way too. Before the subdivision I can come here and hit tab and type point. I will choose point triangle, and we will type just simple expression here. I will type at p scale. Now Houdini will know that you want to change the scale or the radius of the particles or the points, okay, equal to, for example, 0.5 and semicolon. And now let's see the update. As you see now this value is overwriting this value. Okay, so this is another way you can decrease that 0.1, for example. Okay, we didn't hide the curve here, so we need to hide that, the circle, sorry, so we don't see that. So now let's go to the source particle and let's add a color. So I will hit tab and type color. Okay, and in the color I can change that, for example, ramp from attribute, and let's change that, for example, to yellow. Okay, and I will click here and change that to another color, for example purple color. Okay, and let's change. We don't see the changes. I don't know if you know why. Think about it. Why we don't see the changes? Okay, if you can figure out why. So let's change that to blue. Okay, so the reason why we are not seeing the changes, we need to type H, if you remember. Okay, so now we get that. And you can add a motion blur by selecting the source particle and going to the sampling. And here you see I have the geometry velocity blur. If you click that, still you don't see the motion blur because we want to go to the out, and in the mantra we want to tell Houdini we want to render the motion blur. Okay, so I will go to the rendering, and here you see allow motion blur. So if I click on that, now we will have motion blur on the curves. Of course, for those who don't know, or for those who are beginners in Houdini, the motion blur will make the rendering take more time to calculate. Okay, so this is very important if you don't know that. Okay, so of course you can set a light to make a shadow between the curves, and let's do that in a moment. I will click on the point light, and let's move that up. Okay, let's go to the camera and let's see. And now the curves will catch the shadow. Okay, as you see. So you can add multiple lights around the curves to make it nicer and more beautiful. Okay, for those who don't know how to render, I will go to the out, and in the mantra you change the render frame range. Okay, and then click on render to disk in background, and this will run another copy of the rendering in the background. After you clicking to render disk to the background, you can close Houdini, you can open new scene, sorry, so you saving memory. Okay, because you already have another version in the background. Okay, and in the image, of course, you can set a name. This is important. Okay, so you can leave that and change this one. Okay, for example, curves, set it to curves dot $f4.exr. Okay, and hit render to disk in the background. Okay, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next lesson.